Henry VIII did not set out to fight the Pope. He wanted a safe throne, a living son, and a calm court. But the way he chased those goals pulled England out of Rome's control and put the king at the top of the church. This is how a marriage problem turned into a countrywide change. When Henry became king, England was Catholic like most of Western Europe. The Pope in Rome was the final judge in church matters. Young Henry even wrote against Martin Luther and got a proud title from the Pope, Defender of the Faith. He liked old ways, fine clothes, hunting, music, and order. He married Catherine of Aragon, his brother's widow. The Pope had given special permission for that match. Catherine was smart and respected. They had one child who lived, a daughter named Mary, but no son. In Tudor politics, no son meant fear. Who rules next? Will powerful families make trouble? Could war return if the crown looks weak? Henry began to think the marriage was cursed. He pointed to a Bible line about not marrying your brother's widow. At the same time, he fell in love with Anne Boleyn, a sharp, ambitious woman who wanted to be queen, not a footnote. Henry asked for an annulment, a church ruling that the first marriage never counted. In other years, church courts might have found a way, but this was a bad moment. The Holy Roman Emperor, Catherine's nephew, was the most powerful ruler in Central Europe. He had great influence in Italy, and even the Pope knew it. Saying yes to Henry would anger a giant, so Rome stalled. Months became years. Henry's top minister, Cardinal Wolsey, tried to solve it with a church hearing in London at Blackfriars. Picture the room: church law books, guards, whispering courtiers. Catherine knelt and spoke plain words. She said she was Henry's true wife and asked the Pope to decide. The hearing froze. Wolsey's big plan failed, and he fell from power. Two new men rose. Thomas Cromwell was a hard-driving organizer who knew how to use parliament and money. Thomas Cranmer was a careful church scholar. Their idea was bold. If Rome would not decide, England would decide for itself. Step by step, Parliament cut Rome's ropes. Appeals from English church courts to Rome were ended. Fees that used to go to the Pope now stayed in England. In 1533, Cranmer, now Archbishop of Canterbury, ruled that Henry's marriage to Catherine was invalid, and Henry married Anne Boleyn. In 1534, the Act of Supremacy said the king, not the Pope, was the head of the Church of England. Another law, the Treasons Act, made it a crime to deny that change. This was not only about love, it was also about power and money. If the king led the church, he could reorganize it from top to bottom. Cromwell ordered a kingdom-wide list of church wealth called the Valor Ecclesiasticus. Inspectors went to monasteries, places where monks and nuns prayed, taught children, the sick, gave food to the poor, and housed travelers. Reports listed problems and waste, some true, some stretched. Parliament then allowed the crown to close the monasteries. It happened in stages. In 1536, the smaller houses closed first. In 1539 to 1540, the larger houses followed. Their lands, gold, and goods were taken and sold to nobles and rich town families. A new office, the Court of Augmentations, handled the property. This poured money into the royal treasury and, just as important, tied many powerful buyers to the new order. If you bought former church land, you wanted the change to last. Property is glue. To make the new system stick, the crown used oaths. Officials, clergy, and many leading people had to swear that the king was head of the church. Picture a town hall, a table, a Bible, a clerk with a list. Names were called. Most swore and signed. A few refused. Great men who refused, Sir Thomas More and Bishop John Fisher, were executed. It was harsh, but this is how the state locked the change in place: acts, oaths, land sales, and punishment. Not everyone agreed. In the North, thousands joined a huge protest called the Pilgrimage of Grace. A lawyer named Robert Aske helped lead it. Marchers carried church banners and asked the king to stop the closures, restore old ways, and call a new parliament. Henry promised to listen. Then he moved troops, arrested leaders, and crushed the revolt. Aske was put to death. The message was cold and clear. The break with Rome would continue. At court, the family story kept driving policy. Anne Boleyn gave birth to Elizabeth, a healthy daughter, but no surviving sons. Enemies whispered that she had changed the country and failed at her main task. In 1536, she was accused of serious crime and executed. Henry soon married Jane Seymour. Jane gave him a son, Edward, and died after childbirth. The first decisions had been about the heir, but by now, the The laws built to fix that problem were reshaping every parish in England. What changed in everyday worship? At first, churches looked the same, but changes grew each year. A very large English Bible, the Great Bible, was ordered for parish churches so people could hear scripture in their own language. Royal orders told clergy to teach the basics in English, the 10 Commandments, the Lord's Prayer, and to place a Bible where people could see it. Some saints' days and pilgrimages were reduced. Famous shrines were taken down. Parish rules now came by royal order, not from Rome. Some people welcomed the English Bible and fewer church taxes. Others missed the old rhythm, the images, and the local holy places. Priests now answered to bishops who answered to the crown. Slow down inside one parish to feel it. Morning, the priest unlocks the church. A few people gather around the big English Bible, which is chained so it will not walk away. A literate townsman reads a passage aloud. People lean in. Noon, the church wardens meet. The roof leaks where a side shrine once stood. Lead and wood from a closed monastery are for sale. A local gentleman who bought former abbey fields offers timber if the wardens back his plan to fence a path. Evening, a traveler asks for a bed. The old priory guest hall is gone, so the inn takes his coin. The same changes that anger some also feed others. The crown also steered belief, and it moved back and forth. In 1536, the 10 Articles leaned toward simpler, more reforming ideas. In 1537, the bishop's book guided teaching. In 1539, the 6 Articles pulled back toward older teachings on the Mass and the sacraments and set penalties for clergy who broke the rules. Henry never became a full Protestant like some in Germany. He kept many old beliefs. What he wanted most was royal control over church law, church courts, and church money. Still, once the door opened, ideas walked through. Under Edward VI, Protestant ideas spread further. Under Mary I, England briefly returned to Rome and punished Protestants. Under Elizabeth I, the Church of England found a lasting middle way, English in rule and worship, not Roman. Monasteries had once given simple care for travelers, a bowl of pottage for the hungry, help for the sick, schooling for a few. When they closed, that help grew thin. Some sites became grand houses. Some became schools under new owners. Some turned into quarries for stone. Parishes and towns had to carry more of the load. In some places, church wardens set a box for the poor near the door and kept a list of families in need. In other places, help failed. This is one reason the break with Rome felt different from town to town. Look at a royal visit to a former abbey. The last abbot signs a surrender paper. Monks walk out with small pensions and plain clothes. Workmen strip lead from the roofs. Stone is carted away to build a manor. A new owner plans fish ponds where a cloister once stood. A village boy, who used to get bread at the abbey gate, now looks to the parish chest instead. Some years later, that site becomes a school, funded by the new family to show good order. The map is the same, but the purpose has changed. Walk into a parish on a visitation day, a royal checkup. Officers make sure the Great Bible stands in the nave, that sermons are in English, that images banned by order are taken down. A clerk notes which priests can explain the basics, creed, commandments, Lord's Prayer in the people's tongue. Another clerk reminds the wardens of a new rule from 1538. Keep a register of baptisms, marriages, and burials, written each week. Names go into a book that will outlast the people who sign it. Records, not rumor, begin to shape memory. Travel to Canterbury and you see another sign of change. The great shrine of Thomas Becket, once bright with gold and gems, is gone. Pilgrims no longer crawl to a glittering tomb. Relics and offerings have been taken. The space is quieter, plainer, and to some, poorer. To others, it is cleaner and closer to Scripture. The same stone means different things to different eyes. Money mattered through it all. Fees that once went to Rome now stayed at home. Sales of monastery lands helped pay for government and war. New owners, nobles, and gentry now had a personal reason to support the new order. Property tied people to policy. It also changed the map. Fields, mills, fish ponds, and gatehouses that used to belong to an abbey now belonged to a family. That family preferred the crown's church. Foreign affairs shifted too. The Pope cut Henry off from the church. Excommunication. England needed friends. Deals with France came and went. Henry married Anne of Cleves to link England with German Protestants, then quickly ended that marriage when the politics changed and the match did not suit him. He later married Catherine Howard, who was executed, and Catherine Parr, who outlived him and helped steady his last years. Policy tilted with the people around him, but the core shift never reversed. England stayed outside Rome's direct control. Daily habits changed as well. Fewer feast days meant more work days. Parish music shifted as some images and altars went. A new pulpit appeared. Sermons in English lasted longer. Some liked the clearer words. Others missed Latin rhythm and old rites. In London and big ports, changes arrived fast. In border valleys and far shires, changes moved slowly. A traveler might hear a Latin chant in one parish and a long English reading in the next. Change is noisy, and it rarely lands at the same speed everywhere. Think about the legal bones that held all this up so you can picture the machine. The Act in Restraint of Appeals said English church cases would end in England, not in Rome. The Act of Supremacy said the king led the church in England. The Treasons Act punished people who denied that. The Valor List mapped church wealth. The Dissolution Acts shut small houses first, and great abbeys later. The Court of Augmentations took in the property and sold it. These were not just ideas. They were laws, offices, ledgers, oaths, and seals. Think about an oath day up close. In a guild hall, a clerk calls names. A Bible lies on a table. One by one, men swear that the king is head of the church. Some speak boldly, some whisper, a few refuse and are taken away. Outside, people read new sheets about the Great Bible. A boy repeats a verse in English to his mother. She nods and also misses the old candle at a side altar that once burned for her father. This is how big change feels. Mixed gains and mixed losses on the same street. Back at court, the marriages keep turning the wheel. After Jane Seymour's death, Henry's match with Anne of Cleves tried to knit England into a German Protestant net, then came apart fast. Catherine Howard's fall showed how dangerous the court had become. Catherine Parr helped Henry's last years and encouraged reading the Bible in English at home. Under Henry's son, Edward, change would press further. Under Mary, it would snap back toward Rome. Under Elizabeth, it would settle into a lasting English shape. But the main course was already set. The Crown and Parliament had taken the power to decide church law inside the realm, and the country had learned to live with that new fact. Why did one marriage change a kingdom? Because Henry linked family, faith, and power. He just needed a son. Rome said no, so he used Parliament and English law to move authority from the Pope to the Crown. Then he used that new authority to take church land, set new rules, and tie landowners to the change. The result outlived him. An English Bible in parishes, a national church under a monarch, and a habit of using acts of Parliament to make huge changes. Think of the chain. A ring on a finger became acts on paper. Acts on paper became orders and oaths. Orders and oaths became a new map that read Church of England. Henry died in 1547. He left a son, Edward, 2 daughters, Mary and Elizabeth, and a country that could no longer pretend Rome was in charge. The fight began with an annulment and ended with a new idea. The English crown and parliament could remake church and state when they chose to. That idea echoed for centuries. That's where we'll stop. If this helped make a confusing moment clear, it was a pleasure to have done so. And above all, thanks for listening.